Hello Year 7 and welcome back. This is your second lesson of this week and this PowerPoint covers 2 lessons. So it might look really big, but like we've done before, do as much as you can. You can always come back to it. Okay, so this covers 2 days worth of lessons. The first lesson today, we are looking at a new poem called First Day at School by Roger McGough. The first thing I'd like to do then, based on the images that are on this slide, we've got the monster, we've got the bell, we've got the yellow wellies, and we have got the tea. What do you think might be happening in this poem? So what is the plot of the poem that we're going to be looking at today? Once you've done that, in your exercise books or on your piece of paper or on your Word document, however you're doing your work, create 2 separate lists about what you were excited about on your first day at primary school and what you were afraid of. So think back to those emotions you felt about walking through those gates for the first time. What were you excited about? What were you afraid of? I know I was excited because there were lots of new people I was going to meet, but I was also a little bit afraid because it was a much bigger place than where I had been to nursery school, for example. Once you've done that, have a go at answering the question that's at the bottom of this slide. Do you think that a child's first day at school is an important day in their life, and why? So make sure that you are writing in a nice full sentence. Don't just write because it is something, something, something. Okay, I want to know a child's first day at school is important because. Full stops and capital letters. Remember, we are keeping our standards nice and high, even though we're working from home. Okay, so now we're at the point of actually looking at our poem. Okay, so what's going to happen is I'm going to read it through for you once, and then I'd like you to pause, have a read through again by yourself, pick out anything that you don't know that you might need to look up, and then have a go. There are 4 questions. So 2 on this slide, 2 on the next slide. Have a go at those questions in your book. First day at school. A million, billion, willion miles from home, waiting for the bell to go. To go where? Why are they all so big, other children? So noisy? So much at home they must have been born in uniform, lived all their lives in playgrounds, spent the years inventing games that don't let me in. Games that are rough, that swallow you up. And the railings, all around the railings. Are they to keep out wolves and monsters, things that carry off and eat children, things you don't take sweets from? Perhaps they're to stop us getting out, running away from the lessons. Lesson. What does a lesson look like? Sounds small and slimy. They keep them in the glass rooms, whole rooms made out of glass. Imagine. I wish I could remember my name. Mummy said it would come in useful, like wellies, when there's puddles, yellow wellies. I wish she was here. I think my name is sewn on somewhere. Perhaps the teacher will read it for me. Teacher, the one who makes the tea. So have a go now at those quick questions. 2 on this slide, 2 on the next. In your book, remember nice full sentences. Remember capital letters and full stops, please. Okay, so here are the next 2 questions. What I would like you to do for question 4 is to just write a sentence or 2. It doesn't have to be long, but it does need to be in a full sentence, okay? So make sure that you are checking your spelling, checking your grammar, checking your punctuation as you go through. Okay, your next task then is to list 5 ambitious adjectives that you could use to describe a playground. So I don't want to hear big, I don't want to hear loud. Okay, we want some more advanced adjectives that you could use. So use a thesaurus to help you out. You can get them online. You might have a physical copy with you. Have a look in there, see what you can find. Once you've done that and you feel up to the challenge, see if you can make up a nonsense word that sounds like a real thing. So like in the poem, you've got glassroom, meaning classroom, and lesson, meaning lesson. See what you can come up with that might work as a nonsense word. So your main task today is to write a description of walking into a crowded playground. And you're going to be writing this in the style of Roger McGough's poem. So think back to that first time you walked into a big playground, or imagine you were a tiny new student walking into a big playground or a big school. How did you feel? So those are the sorts of emotions and memories we need to be tapping into to try and write this description. Think about your 5 senses to help you create that really rounded image for our reader. So what can you see? What can you hear in the playground? What can you smell? Okay. You can see that there are 3 different tasks. Choose the one that feels appropriate for you. Grammar Stream, I would like you to be doing green or blue. Everybody else, please make the choice. Feel free to do as challenging as you can. And the example at the bottom that I have written as a starting point for you, please use that, take inspiration from that, okay, and have a go at writing your own description of your first day walking in to that crowded playground. So finally, now that we've actually read the poem and we've looked at it a little bit and we know what it's about, what lines from the poem can you link with each of these images? These are the same images from the beginning of today's lesson. What is each image telling us about the speaker's first day at school? So remember, make sure you're writing in full sentences. Only need to be 1 for each image, but we want full stops, capital letters, please. Okay, so this is the second lesson on Roger McGough's poem. Remember, you do not have to do more than an hour for English a day, so please make sure that you're doing as much as you can. But if you don't get to the end, that is absolutely fine. You can always come back and revisit it at a later date. Our first task today. In this table are 6 words that have been taken from Roger McGough's poem. And I'd like you to think, what connotations do you have for each one? So remember, a connotation is the idea or image that you associate with a word. So I have done the first one for you. So a wish, we've got hopes, dreams, birthdays, wanting things. You might want wishing on a star. Okay, there's lots of connotations that you could have with that word. So fill in the chart with your connotations for each of those 6 words. One of the most important things that we do when we're looking at poetry is trying to work out what it is the poem is suggesting based on the words they have chosen to use in their poem. Poets don't just choose random words to use, okay? So they've chosen these words specifically, and it is our job to work out why. So today, you are going to be a poetry detective. You're going to be looking for clues in Roger McGough's poem, and you're going to be working out why a specific word or phrase has been used and what it is telling us. So I'm going to talk you through an example in the next slide, and then you're going to have a go yourselves. So this is the first stanza of the poem, and what I have done is I've picked out 3 words or phrases to investigate. So the first one I've picked up is the one that's in the parentheses, in the brackets, to go where. Now, what I have done, I have noticed that it is a question. So that is the first thing I say in my explanation. The use of a rhetorical question, so I've told you what the technique is, a question that does not require an answer, reveals that the speaker is unsure of why the bell rings. He's questioning it, isn't he? So if you're questioning something you're not very sure, that is telling us something about the speaker. It also creates amusement for the reader, as the bell doesn't physically travel anywhere, it just rings. Roger McGough is playing on that phrase, to go somewhere. So if you're going somewhere, you're physically moving. But the phrase the bell goes, we all know that that just means the bell rings. So that is something that the reader knows that the speaker or the narrator of this poem does not. So all I've done is written a couple of sentences explaining what I have worked out from that phrase. I will talk you through the next couple as well, and then give you some guidelines for you to have a go yourself. My next phrase, must have been born in uniform. Okay, I picked this because it's quite a funny image of being born into a uniform. But also, this metaphor reveals how uncomfortable the narrator is at school. So I've picked out what technique it is, and I've told you what it's telling us. So it's telling us that he's uncomfortable. All the other children seem to fit in naturally, as if they were born there in their school uniforms, whereas our narrator is confused and insecure. He doesn't feel like he fits in. Finally, I've only picked one word out of this last line, and that word is rough. Now, rather than picking out a technique, because of course this is only one word, I've told you what word class it is. So the noun rough highlights the vulnerability of the narrator. So he's feeling quite vulnerable. He is a lot younger than the older children at school, and he is frightened of their rough games. Okay, so rough has some quite negative connotations, potentially quite violent, a little bit scary. So we get this feeling that the narrator, our speaker, is feeling unsure and vulnerable and insecure in this first stanza. Your job as our poetry detective is to pick out 5 more words or phrases from the rest of the poem to investigate. Okay, now if you're struggling with what to pick, there are some suggestions on the next slide. Grammar stream classes, I'd like you to have a go at picking your own. If you do need some guidance, flick onto the next slide and you will see that I've picked out 5 words or phrases that you can investigate yourself. What you need to be doing when you're doing your investigation is trying to work out, what does it tell you? Why do you think that is? So you might want to be thinking about connotations. You might want to be thinking of the image it's creating for us, whether it's got a particular tone. So it might be that it has a overwhelming tone. It might be that it has a fearful tone. Okay, so think about how it's being said. And does it tell us anything new about the speaker's feelings? So just like on that first stanza, we found out that the speaker was feeling a bit unsure because he used a rhetorical question. We can work out what the speaker is feeling based on the keywords and the key techniques that we are able to pick out. You need to, just like I did, underline or highlight on your version of the poem and write a short explanation, okay, of what you found out. Now, it only needs to be a couple of sentences. There are 3 sentence starters on this slide that you can use to help shape that explanation and make it really clear what it is that you have worked out from your investigation. So the 5 lines, phrases that I've picked out for you. Are they to keep out wolves and monsters? Sounds small and slimy. Whole rooms made out of glass, imagine. I wish I could remember my name. Teacher, the one who makes the tea. Now you can pick any of those. You can use some of them. You can use one of them. It doesn't matter. Okay, these are just to help you out. You might want to pick out one key word from a phrase. It is completely up to you. Okay, so these are just as guidance. Now, one thing we also need to think about if we are being detectives and investigating a poem is the perspective, so the viewpoint from which it is being written and how we are viewing it as a reader. Now, we know that the speaker in this poem is a young child, okay? And McGough includes many neologisms, which is just a technical term for a made-up word, okay, or a made-up expression, to show how this young narrator is feeling, okay? Now, as readers, we have our own perspective on the poem, okay? You're all started secondary school, so you are older than this narrator, so you're going to be able to look at it with a different perspective. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pick one of those 3 views that are on this slide and explain why you agree with that perspective in your book. So justify it, give your reason of why you agree with one of the 3 perspectives that is written on this slide. Once you have done that, if you feel up to the challenge, pick one of the 3 options and explain why you believe it is incorrect. So dispute it. You don't actually have to believe it, but it is good practice to understand why somebody might see something from a different perspective to you. Okay, so we have done really good work today, investigating the poem, working out what's going on, working out why we think this, but now it is time to write up our findings. Okay, like any good detective, we've got to make sure it's nice and clear for other people to read. So to do this, we are going to be using analytical paragraphs. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to have a go at following the grid that's on this slide in order to answer the question, how does Roger McGough show that the speaker is feeling scared and unsure? So scared and unsure are our key words there. The first thing you need to do is pick out a quote that shows the narrator's fear, okay, and that's going to be the starting point of your paragraph. You then need to identify what the device, the technique, or the key word is in that quotation and explain to us why it shows fear. Okay, so think about the connotations, think about the images that are created, just like you've already looked at, and then explain to us how a reader might react. So how is it going to make us feel? Is it going to make us question anything? What's it going to make us think? Okay, so how does the reader react to it? What you then need to do is you need to find a second quotation to support the first one. And then if you can, try and draw some links between the two. Are they similar? Are they telling us the same thing? Are they different? What is different about them? Okay, so have a think. What links can you make between the two quotes that you have chosen? And finally, can you show multiple interpretations? So are there different ways of looking at the quotes? This is linking back to that perspective work that we looked at before. Now, don't worry if you don't get all the way through to number 6, all right? If you manage to get to 3 or 4, okay, and you're really struggling with finding links or doing multiple interpretations, don't worry about those last 2 boxes. Just repeat 1, 2, and 3 with a second quotation. There are some sentence starters on this slide if you're not sure about how to phrase your analytical paragraphs or how to start off. Okay, so use these as a guide. Where I have put a straight line, that means that you need to put a quote in there. Okay, so that means you need to make sure you've got quotation marks and it needs to come directly from the poem. Where you've got the ellipsis, so those 3 dots, that means you need to continue the sentence. So remember to explain why. Remember, full stops, capital letters. Okay. What you've got here is a framework. So don't feel that you need to stick absolutely to this, but it is a really good way of helping you start to frame those analytical paragraphs and making sure that all of that good detective work you have done today is nice and clearly laid out for your reader. Finally then, have a go at completing this exit card. So one thing I learned today was next time I need to work on, and where out of 10, with 1 being not at all confident and 10 being I've got this, miss, don't worry about it, where do you feel you are in terms of understanding how to work out what a poem means, and why do you think you're there? Okay, so just want to gauge how you're feeling about poetry at this point. We're roughly halfway through at the moment, so let's see where we are in comparison to where we started. Like I've said, do as much as you can in the hour. This is 2 days worth of work, so please don't feel this needs to be completed all at once, and I will see you soon.